we sent you a packing list. And in that getting ready guide, it has some things that are just important to note. We do tend to get a little bit colder here than you might be used to, especially if you're going on those mountain trips, those camping trips. And so making sure to bring some warmer layers is really important. A rain jacket is really important to bring. And then I saw on a note, if your daughter should pack anything in addition to what's on the packing list. Some at High Trails, we do something called the JC dinner, which is a time when people dress up. And so if your daughter has a favorite costume or a favorite themed thing, we would never discourage you from bringing that. But no pressure to go out and buy anything at all. Just things that costumes and stuff that you might have. If you would like to bring your own sheets, that's great. Some campers, I believe, bring mattress pads, but I think the mattresses are pretty comfortable, so don't worry about any padding for the beds or anything like that. And then some things that are on here that campers like to have are just pictures of home. So if they have a picture of a pet or a picture of your parents to hang around their bunk, campers really like that. Any games, anything to bring like that, to just kind of make the cabin feel a little bit more homey. And I'm happy to answer any questions people have about packing, but that's kind of things we like to highlight that might not be on the packing list. And I will be passing it off to Ariella to talk about rentals and purchases.
So things that you can rent at camp include all these things on the far left side of the screen. Backpacking backpacks. Or if you're doing the Sanborn Junior program, though, you don't need to rent one because those are already provided for you as part of that 2-week introductory program. We have sleeping bags for rental, bed linens. So if you are flying and don't want to bring a whole set of sheets and whatnot, we have those too. Blankets, riding boots, and then the camping items you can purchase. A lot of people like the Crazy Creek chairs. They're actually pretty packable on backpacks. People like to take them up on, when they're sitting around making friendship bracelets on their water bottles, or sitting down by the volleyball court waiting for their rotation in, or at the Gaga ball pit. Sleeping pads, gloves. So you can kind of see just the variety of things that you may not necessarily have at home. Obviously, if you have these things, feel free to bring your own. Compression stuff sack is a nice thing, and I'm sure Quinn would agree. On those trips, it is nice to be able to pack down some of those. If you're bringing your own sleeping bag and it's really big, a compression stuff sack will help kind of pack those down. And then obviously water bottles are super important at camp. We recommend that everybody bring 2. And the water bottles we sell are branded and they're Nalgene, so that's kind of nice. Summit Day Pack is a lightweight backpack for your mountain climb. So if you are climbing a 14,000-foot mountain, perhaps, this Summit Pack is like a very lightweight, packable pack, usually a little bit lighter than your standard kind of school backpack. So it's just a little bit lighter to carry in your other backpack. You can also use that full-size pack as your Summit Pack too. And then we have what we like to call the camp swag. And so it's going to be all of our, Carly has on the brand new this year, 2025 sweatshirt. It's a little Lazy S Diamond, which is our brand, and then a really cool pattern on the back. She's not going to show you right now because she's not sure she can get it in the square. So hoodies, sweatshirts, t-shirts, and flannel pants. The sweatpants are often very popular as well. So those are all some of the things you can get at the either rent or purchase when you get to camp. Sometimes you get to camp and you're like, oh shoot, I forgot my, wool socks. And so we have some that we can help you out with.
Moving on to kind of what each facility looks like. We're going to start with the High Trails facilities and what the cabins look like there. And then we'll move on to what it looks like at Big Spring in those units. And so at High Trails, we have all of the campers are living in cabins, and there's 2 sides to each cabin. And so on each side of the cabin, there's going to be 9 or 10 campers. And then in addition to that, there's 2 to 3 counselors living on each side of the cabin with the girls. In the center of the cabin, there is a shared living room that has a fireplace, and it's just a really nice, cozy area for the girls to get together, play games, hang out by the fire, make s'mores. And then there's also a bathroom that is inside of the cabin. And so that bathroom has the 3 showers, 3 toilets, and 6 sinks. And there's storage space in the bathrooms to have hanging cubbies and space under the sinks for toiletries. And then at High Trails, each camper has their own locker in the bunk area. So that means that they can actually unpack all of their luggage and put it in their locker closet for the time while they're at camp. And those lockers have usually a couple of shelves and a hanging rod. There's also space on top of the locker to put larger items like backpacking backpacks and sleeping bags, sleeping pads. And then the luggage that you bring to camp, like a trunk, suitcase, duffel bag, those actually don't need to live in the cabin during the time you're at camp because we have luggage tents at High Trails, and that's where we will be placing our luggage while at camp. And so now I'm going to pass it off to Quinn to talk about the Big Spring facilities.
Thanks, Jenny. So Big Spring looks a little different. At Big Spring, we live in a variety of different spaces. And so we'll start off with our cabins. So our cabins are where our youngest campers live. Those are our 8 to 10-year-olds in the 2-week junior program. We have 2 cabins at Big Spring, Massive and Red Cloud. And those cabins are both split into 2 sides, north and south. Each side has several bunk beds, a wall of lockers for campers' belongings, and each side has a bathroom. And about 10 to 12 campers and 2 to 3 staff live in each of those cabins. Next up are the yurts. We have 4 yurts at Big Spring: Antero, Blanca, Crestone, and Democrat, which are home to boys in the 3rd through 5th grades. These boys are the youngest group of campers in our month-long program. And the yurts really make for a pretty awesome transitionary space from that 2-week-long junior program into the full-on month-long session. In the yurts, there's going to be about 12 to 14 boys and 3 to 4 counselors per yurt. And although they still sleep in bunk beds, similarly to the junior cabins, the boys get introduced to some of the other staples of life in the month-long program, like having that central wash house on the ridge as opposed to a bathroom in your building. And then lastly, all of the boys in 6th grade and up sleep in our iconic wood frame green canvas tents. The tents are much smaller than the cabins or yurts, with each tent sleeping about 4 to 5 boys and 1 to 2 staff members, depending on numbers in their age group. And like the yurts on ABC Ridge, each age group and cluster of tents has their own centrally located wash house on the ridge. And on our next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more about some storage options and what that looks like in each of these living spaces. So like I mentioned earlier, there are lockers in the junior cabins. A lot of our juniors will unpack most of their belongings into these lockers because they've got a nice hanging rod in there, space for toiletries, etc. And then store their empty suitcases or trunks either above the locker or sometimes underneath the bunk bed. And you'll see some of the dimensions are down there in those bullet points. Once the boys make their way over to ABC Ridge and transition into the month-long program, they will start using their luggage to store most of their belongings throughout the session. Lots of the boys like to have a big trunk for storage, but a larger duffel bag or suitcase will also do the trick. In the yurts, luggage can live either, as you can sort of see here, at the foot of the bed or also underneath the bunk bed. And as you can kind of see in the back there next to the door, our yurts have that sort of diamond-shaped lattice frame running around the inside of the yurts, which is super convenient for hanging up your pack, your Crazy Creek. I've ventured into a yurt and seen a little mini basketball hoop hanging up there from time to time. So things like that, you can get a little creative with the storage space in the yurts. And a little bit of a sidebar here, as the boys transition into these living areas with central wash houses, which are our yurts and tents, they're also going to start storing things like toiletries, towels, all that good stuff in the wash house and not in the unit with them. So although they do lose a little bit of shelf space as they kind of leave those lockers behind when they move into the yurt or the tent, they'll get that back in the wash house area, which will have a bunch of cubbies and space for all their toiletries and other belongings like that. Once the boys move into the tents, it's pretty full commit to storing all your belongings in your luggage, and that's usually going to go underneath the bed as there's no longer that lattice option for hanging things up in the living space. A lot of our beds in the tents especially are adjustable, similar to a dorm bed, so they can be raised to fit trunks and suitcases underneath them. And if the boys get a particularly crafty counselor, it's not uncommon for staff to bring some paracord or a similar storage solution with them and hang that up from the wood frame. So there's occasionally a little extra space for hanging things up and whatnot. But that's a little bit of a fun extra, and that may or may not happen depending on what their counselor's setup is looking like. And next up is going to be Carly talking about laundry.
Yeah, so you might be thinking to yourself, I'm going to be at camp for a month. How am I going to have enough space in my luggage to bring one pair of jeans for every day? And the answer is, please don't. We do laundry every other day at High Trails and every other day at Big Spring. And so you have loads of time, or you have lots of opportunities to get your clothes cleaned. Our laundresses are some of the hardest working people on property. And so we just have a few things that we like to forefront, just so people are aware of the laundry situation at camp. And these are things that you can talk about with your camper before they arrive at camp. The first thing is just making sure that all of their clothes are labeled. And so putting initials on it, putting maybe their name on it. Those stickers some campers have that say their names are great to put on the tags. And this is because the way the laundry works is every camper in each unit or each cabin puts it into a laundry bag. And then the laundresses pick that up either at a central location at Big Spring or on the porches of the cabins at High Trails. And so they're all kind of mixed together. It's not sorted by camper. And so at the end of the day, when the laundry's back, the counselors will work with the campers to get the laundry back to the appropriate camper. But sometimes at High Trails, every single camper has a pair of black leggings. And so it can be difficult to find out whose leggings are whose unless you have those names in that. And that kind of helps with mix-ups and things like that. Yeah, as I mentioned, laundry's done every other day. Talking to your camper about things that are appropriate to put in the laundry and things that aren't appropriate to put in the laundry might be helpful. Things like rain jackets, puffy coats do not need to be washed. That kind of makes the process harder for the laundresses. And then if your camper has a favorite wool sweater or a favorite cashmere sweater, that might not be the thing to send because all of our laundry does get washed and dried. And so clothes that are laundry safe in all situations are crucial. And yeah, it's all kind of communal in the same bin, and the counselors will work with your kids to get it back. But if you have any questions about laundry or anything else like that, just drop them in the chat and I'd be happy to answer them. And now Ariella is going to talk about how to arrive by car.
Yes. There are a few normal ways to get to camp. One is in a car. Second is potentially on a bus coming from one of our airports. Third is in a van coming from an airport. And fourth, depending on, your comfort, is apparently by horse is what I've been recently told, but doesn't always happen. But you never know. We could start sometime. I will say, as a funny aside, a lot of kids used to come by train back in the day because Sanborn has been around since 1948. And a lot of campers used to come via rail and get picked up in Colorado Springs, not on horses, but by buses. So fun little side note, but just if you are coming in a car, which a lot of people are, it looked like we had a lot of, I don't know if Seattle's coming all the way from car, but a lot of people are driving to camp, and that's pretty normal. What we will do is we want folks to, Jenny actually puts together this really awesome grid on the transportation form in your online forms environment in the Camp and Touch space. You will fill out a transportation form. And it's important, even if you're coming by car, for you to fill this form out because you get to kind of weigh in on kind of your arrival window. And those windows, I think, are a couple hours long, and then Jenny will assign everyone so we don't have everyone showing up all at the same time, because we have a lot of things we do when you first get to camp. You check in with the health center, you meet the directors, you get to move your campers in. And so it's nice to have a little bit of, so people aren't just in a big long queue, a little bit of a break between folks. So you will get an opportunity on the transportation form to pick your time. And then in May, you will receive the time, or right before when you're coming into camp, we'll send out an email at an appropriate time, letting you know what time to arrive at camp. And so Departure times actually are a little bit easier and are based on whenever you as a family can pick up between those 8 o'clock and 11 a.m. hours. If for some reason, sometimes we'll have families who have been visiting Colorado or traveling here, and they actually have made an airplane flight for, later in the day on opening day. So, we flew in from Seattle, but we toured around Colorado a little bit. We're dropping off our camper by car and then we're flying out. We can always accommodate some of those earlier arrivals, but just reach out to us and let us know so we are aware anybody is showing up, because ideally we want our staff to be ready to welcome everyone. And so after 8 is ideal. One other thing. Don't bring too many things if you're a car camper, because it will, going back to what Carly said, don't bring all those jeans. Just because you can, you shouldn't. Thank you.
Side note, with coming by car, we do have a lot of families who might be flying to camp with their campers, but then renting a car and driving to camp. And so in the transportation form, please mark that you are driving to camp by car, because then we don't think that we are meeting the camper at their gate at the airport like we would if they were flying to camp on those forms. So go ahead, Quinn.
Okay, so even though it may seem very exciting to lean into that late 1800s around the world in 80 days aesthetic and travel across the country or across the globe for some of our campers with a trunk that for some of the kids coming to camp is probably bigger than them, that's not always the most feasible or convenient option. And so you can ship your luggage or trunk to camp. If you choose to take this option and send some of those bigger pieces of luggage or a trunk to camp ahead of your camper, we ask that you plan to ship it or post it so that you get it in the mail at least 10 days before the start of the session, so that we can be sure your camper's luggage makes it to camp before they do. It's best for trunks and duffels to be shipped to us in boxes, so that they can avoid as much damage as possible while in transit. And so that we can also try and keep the pricing situation within the scope of normal shipping and not incur any additional fees or anything like that. On the topic of fees, it's also a good idea to try and shoot for a sub 50-pound trunk if possible, so that you're not charged extra to ship an overweight item. When we send your camper's luggage back to you, we will save the box that you sent it in originally, relabel it accordingly, and send it back your way. Our shipping insurance for camper luggage comes out to about $900 of coverage, unless you request a higher amount. And lastly, if you don't really want to work out the logistics of shipping, dropping things off at the FedEx store or the post office or what have you, we've partnered with Ship Camps, which is a service with shipping rates that start at around $99 each way and will come grab your luggage from your front door. And if you have any shipping or travel specific questions, Jenny is a really great point person to send those to.
And so finally, with campers who are flying to camp, we have about a third of our camper base will fly to and from camp without their parents going through the airports with them. And so for us as a Sanborn policy, we make sure that we are with every single camper the entire time they're at the Denver or Colorado Springs airport, whether they are an 8-year-old unaccompanied minor or if they are 16 years old and in our JCs and Outbacker program. It doesn't matter how old they are, we still want to be with them as adults through the airport. And so that means that on opening day, our staff will get gate passes to go through security to meet all of our campers, whether they're unaccompanied minors or not. We'll meet them as they walk off of the plane. And you can see in this photo, we have bright orange Sanborn Western Camps Airport Crew t-shirts that we will be wearing so that all of the campers know who our staff members are, so that they know that we are safe people to go with. So we will meet them as they walk off the plane. We'll go with them to baggage claim to help them grab their bags. And then we have an area where I will be in the airport centrally near the baggage claim. We'll have our mountain of luggage, and all of the kids, at least at the Denver airport, there is a courtyard outside that they get to hang out on, play games, there's bags, and we also have a cooler of food. They want to buy food, we'll help them go get food. So they'll hang out in that courtyard outside and get to eat while they wait for the charter buses to arrive at the airport. And then they will ride charter buses back to camp. In Colorado Springs, it's a little bit smaller of an airport. And so typically they will ride in vans back to camp with the staff members that pick them up. And then on closing day, it's kind of the reverse process. We will have all of the campers ride on the charter buses or vans to the airports. And then once they're at the airports, we will help them check their bags in. We go through security with them, and we wait with them at their gates until their planes take off. And then not only do we wait until their plane takes off, but most of us are still at the airport well beyond the time that the flight is probably already back at home with you guys. So we really want to make sure that all of the kids make it home, and we make sure that we are responsible for making that happen. And then for both Colorado Springs and Denver flights, we ask that they arrive between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. on opening day, and then on closing day that they depart between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. And we also have recommended flights from major cities, and there's a couple of reasons why we want to do this. First of all, if your camper is flying on a plane, oftentimes it's nice to have another camper who's on that plane with them, and it just gives them that little reassurance that they're not alone. And secondly, it helps us organizationally to be able to make sure that we have enough staff at the airport to meet each camper at their flights, because it's a lot easier for us to pick up all 10 campers from Kansas City on one flight than to have 5 different flights from Kansas City coming in at different times and different gates. So that's why we have the recommended flights, and we would love it if you look at those. And then if your campers are actually truly unaccompanied minors, the airlines are going to ask that you fill out an unaccompanied minor form, and they're going to require when you purchase the ticket that you write the name down of someone who is going to be meeting your camper at the airport. And so we have for Colorado Springs Airport, Quinn, and then at the Denver International Airport, Taylor Inderbo. And those are both year-round staff members at Sanborn. That being said, when we have 100 campers flying into Denver, Taylor cannot clone herself and be in 20 places at the same time. So we typically bring around 30 staff members to the airport to make this happen. And so we will be contacting you a week or two prior to the flights so that we can let you know exactly which staff member is going to be meeting your camper at the gate. And we'll ask that you change those unaccompanied minor forms at that time to match who it is that's going to be at the airport. And those are going to be our counselors, who are the people that are with your campers throughout the summer. And they are very well versed in how to meet your campers at the airport. And finally, we would like to open it up if any of you guys have questions. And our first question looks like, oh, Quinn, it looks like you answered it. Are there any recommendations on a trunk size for the boys and yurts? And you mentioned something in the 32 by 13 by 17 range. And if you guys have any other questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat.
I'll also say, having had boys in yurts, if you are driving and have the flexibility, sometimes those under the bed, like Rubbermaid containers, that aren't exceptionally tall, are actually pretty functional. Sometimes they have little rollers on them. I think they're called the under the bed storage units. So sometimes having a couple of those is nice, because then it's also not a big deep trunk. It's more of a layered situation.
So we have another question. Is it typical to rent cowboy boots at camp? And how the kids listen to music since they won't have their phones? So that's a great question. Thank you, Kevin. So yes, we do have a boot barn at both camps where we have a variety of cowboy boots, a bunch of different styles in each size, so that campers can find pairs that fit really, really well, that they are welcome to use while they're at camp. Oftentimes, this is a really cost-effective way to get your camper cowboy boots, because if they're still growing, probably won't fit into the same size the next year. So yes, a lot of campers do rent cowboy boots. And as far as listening to music, we have a couple of different options. Sometimes you can get older iPods that don't necessarily have, or MP3 players that don't have access to the internet. And so those campers are welcome to use. Additionally, we have our counselors tend to be able to having music, and they'll play it on speakers that everyone can listen to as opposed to with earphones.
Jenny, if I could just tack on to the end of that too, when I was a counselor at Big Spring, one of the like favorite things that my tents did at the start of every session was we would kind of like make a list and everybody like, all right, what's your favorite song? What's going on our playlist? So during like CT squared or other downtime, like we can have some songs that everybody's agreed on that we like to play and that everybody knows is going to generally be a crowd pleaser for those moments when we do want to listen to music. So that's an activity that your campers counselors might do with them. I know it's something that I always enjoyed doing as a counselor, and the boys usually look forward to it as well.
I noticed there are a couple of questions regarding food and care packages and that sort of thing. So Carly, do you want to pick up a few care package questions?
Yeah, that's great. Care packages campers love to receive. However, we do ask that you don't send any food. And the reason behind that is Big Spring, the tents and the yurts do not have stable walls. And High Trail, the cabins tend to get mice friends if there are a lot of care packages or a lot of food in the care packages that get brought to the cabins. And so we love the care packages, small games, little trinkets, pictures from home, all of that is great. But please don't send any food. I actually don't know if you can send gum in care packages. So if somebody will, probably not. Gum sticks to things and litters easily, so I would ask that you don't. And we will take campers' food if it does receive in care packages, since this is something that has been kind of a ask for a while. So keep that in mind that if you send 15 bags of Doritos, we will take those Doritos and throw them away. So just kind of keep that in mind. But care packages are great. And that is just solely for critter and animal purposes that we ask that campers don't have food. There are tons of snacks though. So if you're worried about your campers not having enough snacks, there are tons of snacks in the lodges, fruit, goldfish, hot chocolate, honey packets. They have tons of snacks and tons of food that they have access to. We just kind of like to control that food intake. Any other questions or anything I missed on the care packages front? Oh yes, this comment that Nicole just said about light up stuff and boas for the whole cabin or the whole unit is great. We love seeing at dances, campers will show what they got in their care packages with the little sunglasses and all of that, and it's really fun and kind of a bonding moment for the campers.
Direct message question was in regards to sort of like over the counter or nutritional supplements, vitamins, those sort of things, hydration packets that potentially you would send to the nurse to have the nurse distribute to your campers. And like Carly said, we do have lots of snacks and we always have fruit available and those things. But like think about maybe your kid likes to take an emergency. My kids do. And because of the state of Colorado and we operate as a child care licensing facility, which means that anything that sort of that is like in the medicinal space, which includes vitamins and homeopathics, gummy vitamins, melatonin, a lot of those kind of things, actually have to have basically a doctor's order, and it's called the Permission for Medication Administration form. So if you want to send those sort of items with your camper to have the nurse distribute them, even if it's not a daily thing, even if it's just when maybe your kid's feeling a little like I'm getting a little sore throat, or I'm getting some allergies and need a Zyrtec or something that would be over the counter. Those things we would actually need a permission for medication administration form signed by a physician. We do have a very wide variety of OTCs in our formulary, so our nurses do have those ibuprofens, Tylenols, kind of broad spectrum Robitussin, that sort of thing that they can administer. You sign off on that when you sign off on that OTC permission form, so that we have those options. But if there are those additional supplements that you want your child to take, just make sure when you get your physician's exam filled out that you have that permission for medication form filled out as well, so that nurses can actually give that to your kids.
Thanks, Harry. We have another question asking, what happens if there's inclement weather at camp? Quinn, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, sure. So as you will have heard ad nauseum, if anybody has ever tried to tell you anything about coming to Colorado for a vacation or for summer camp, It's real sunny up here. We get about 300 days of sunshine a year. But that doesn't mean that there's not also some inclement weather that we could run into when we're hanging out around camp or out on trips, etc., because we spend a lot of time outside at camp. And it's a bit of a mixed bag in terms of we do get a lot of, well, not a lot of, but we do see lightning and thunderstorms at camp, sometimes when we're out in the backcountry or when we're doing activities around camp. And in instances like that, our staff training and our trip leader training has a lot of really extensive run-throughs of the best places to go on property that are indoors, a lot of spaces that we can go play inside games. When it's a thundery afternoon at Big Spring, we love playing floor hockey in the Arc. So there's a lot of safe indoor spaces that we can go to in terms of like thunder or lightning or more severe inclement weather. But I will also say that at camp, it does rain and we play in the rain, which is why sending your campers with a great raincoat and a storm ready attitude is a huge bonus because we like to hike in the rain. We like to play sports in the rain. We get those frequent afternoon showers during the summer, but we try not to let that stop our momentum too much.
I don't know. Are there any other questions that anyone has that they'd like for us to answer before we all hop off? Well, thank you all so much for joining us. And Carly just placed all of our email addresses into the chat. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions at all. And one more.
Can we ask one more question?
Yes,
Sorry
please,
to be delayed here.
go ahead.
James is wondering if you have any more recommendations. It'll be his first time in a yurt. So fun things to pack or any other yurt recommendations.
I know in the yurts, there's that big open space in the middle. Card games are huge. So if you like to play any game with a standard deck of cards or a specialized game like Pokemon or Magic the Gathering, those are great things to bring for those downtime moments hanging out around the yurt.
Awesome. Thank you.
I also have one too, that's kind of fun. So they make, and I actually have no idea what they're really used for, but if you go to Walmart or Target or some other big box store, sometimes they make like big S hooks. So think about that lattice work. They're like metal S hooks. And so if you can find some of those that are, 3 to 4 inches big, then those can hang up, and then you can hang your jackets or your backpacks or things on that lattice a little bit more easily, and they'll stay.
Carly, would you like to talk about the size of backpacks?
Yeah, that's great. We have different sizes kind of based on the age of the camper available for rent. And so our junior campers will get I believe it's a 25-liter pack, and that is just because they are carrying only their clothes when they go out on those overnight trips. And then our oldest campers who go on those 5-day trips will get a 65-liter pack. And our ridge leaders on opening day will fit each camper to the pack kind of based on their size, and then also based on what trips they're going to go on. If they're solely going to go on horse trips, then they might give them a different pack just for that cabin site overnight and things like that. If you are interested in buying your camper a pack, I am happy to answer any questions, give recommendations for packs that we use. The ones we have are like Osprey and Deuter, but feel free to email me. My email is Carly@Sanborn Western Camps. And I'm happy to give you any recommendations if you're interested in buying a pack. But we do have those packs available for rent, kind of in that 25 to 75 liter range for campers to rent as well. And I see that there's a question about electrolyte mixes. Yeah, we would ask again that you keep those out of the cabin. I believe that's something that if you're worried about your kid needing it for dehydration, same thing as the supplements, give it to the nurses, and they will administer that as needed, or give it on trips for counselors, things like that. But yeah, keeping those out of the cabin is preferred.
I saw a question about a camera. And I know Carly responded, of course, but I am going to emphasize this because we love pictures at camp. And the great thing is if you all have point and shoot cameras and then you take the best sunset picture of the whole summer, your photo might end up as our next poster image. So we really love when campers and staff take photos, because those are the photos that we utilize every Sunday when we do the big photo upload. So your parents get to have that glimpse on Sunday of, oh, what are they doing and what are they seeing? And sometimes you can share those with your best pictures of the week with the photographers, and they'll post your pictures online too. So yes, bring digital cameras. It's a great way to capture the summer, and it is optional, but we like it when you do.
I'll also tack on to that some point and shoot cameras are pretty nice and also maybe won't survive a summer at camp. So one thing that a decent amount of my campers did when I was a counselor, and something that myself and some of my other staff members have done, is visit a store like Goodwill or Savers if you've got something like that in your area, because often you'll be able to find an older digital camera that will still take pretty great pictures, but you'll be able to get for a bit cheaper. Throw a good SD card in there, and then it'll be okay if it ends up falling in the river or disappearing into the void off a 14er or something like that.
We had one other question, and Katie just hopped on and was curious about some junior rentals. And just as a reiteration, juniors don't need those big month-long backpacking backpacks. Those come with the program, but otherwise we have sheets and blankets available for rental, as well as riding boots. And Jenny, help me out with what else we rent.
So as far as rentals, we have rentals for backpacking backpacks. Again, the juniors don't need that. And sleeping bags, bed linens, blankets, riding boots, sleeping pads. Those are what we have for rentals.
And one last thing I'll add is both rentals and the store will be open when you drop your camper off. And so if you are worried that your camper might not remember that they don't have sheets, good news, you'll be able to help them pick out those things. You'll be able to get them some swag or maybe use some swag. And so you'll be able to walk them through that process and tell them what they have and what they don't have. So for that peace of mind, you'll have access to the rental shop and the store as well.
We will also make a form, very special form, live in May, and that is our additional options form. And so that will have a place where you can reserve rentals, as well as if your camper is flying, you can request that one-way transportation both ways to and from the airport of your choice, Colorado Springs or Denver.
And there's one more question. How do Saturday dances work? And I'll just quickly talk about that. The Saturday dances are really fun. Quinn answered it. But yeah, High Trails comes down to Big Spring. It's in the Arc. The first one, there's ice cream at. And it's kind of a great opportunity to all hang out. The JCs and the Outbackers, who are our oldest campers, Switch, who creates the camp appropriate playlist for the dance. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. If you have siblings at either camp, it's a great time to hang out with each other. And we make sure to get lots of pictures of those siblings at the dances. And it's a lot of people's highlight of the week, including mine. Are there any more questions before we say good night? Does anybody else have anything else to add? Cool. Well, thank you all for joining our Zoom Packing and Travel. We are so excited for you all to be at camp very soon. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to drop them in the chat as people leave. But have a good night, and we'll see you in a few months.